Okay, welcome back to the channel. We are going to have an interesting discussion today. We're going to talk about something that I think I get asked more than anything else, or if it's not, it's close to it. And that is, can I lose fat and build muscle at the same time? Such a great question. I think it's something that everyone ultimately wants to do, right? Everyone wants to lose fat, but they also want to get a lean, toned, defined look by getting some muscle on them. And they want to be able to do it all. So I guess the question is, can you have your cake and eat it too? And that's what we're going to talk about today, because the answer is not quite as clear cut as you might want or you might think. So let's go grab your coffee, come back, and let's talk about, can you actually lose fat and build muscle at the same time? Okay, so the ultimate question is, can it be done? Yes or no? And the answer is kind of, well, sort of. So let me clarify that. So in a given moment of time, no, you can't do it. You either have to be in a deficit to lose fat, or you have to be in a surplus to put on some muscle. In a moment of time, in a short period of time, we could even say maybe even 24 hours. You can't do both in these little bits of time. And so that makes people think, oh, well, what do I do? Well, for some of you who are maybe newer to strength training, newer to the whole fitness journey, if you have a lot of weight to lose, you probably could have more success doing both at the same time. You're going to be focusing on losing fat and lifting as heavy as you can, and you will probably be gaining some muscle as you go. A lot of people like to call that newbie gains, right? When you're new to something, you're going to benefit greatly from it at the beginning. But like anything else, the more you get into it, probably the more challenging it's going to be. It's going to get harder to get stronger as you get stronger. It's going to get harder to lose fat as you lose fat. But if you're just starting out, that's probably the person that could potentially benefit the most from trying to do both at the same time. So for the vast majority of other people, that's not the best way to think about it and to go about it. So let's talk about that next. Okay, so for the vast majority of people, what I recommend you do is have two distinct phases: fat loss phase and a bulking phase, if you want to call it that, or a muscle building phase. Because what happens is, if you're trying to do both, you don't really know how you're making progress, right? You don't know, well, I'm losing weight, but am I really building muscle? How are you going to know? I mean, it's very confusing. And I think so many people often will spin their wheels because they just don't know what to do. Do I eat more calories? Do I eat less calories? How many calories do I eat, for heaven's sakes? Do I lift over here? What do I do? So that's why I recommend two distinct phases: a fat loss phase and a muscle building phase. Now, we're talking, I said before that in a moment of time, you can't do both. But if you take that moment of time and expand it to a chunk of time, let's say 6 months or a year, you definitely can do both. So let's talk about, how can I set up my phases? How can I do this over a period of time? So let's talk about that next. All right, so now that we've kind of determined that having two separate phases is probably the best way to go over an extended period of time, let's talk about some questions that I get all the time, and this is going to help clarify step by step how to do this, okay? So the first question: do I start with a cut or do I start with the bulk? How do I know which to go with? That's a great question. Here's my advice for you on that question. If you have more fat to lose, then I would definitely start with your fat loss phase. And what you're going to do is you're going to get as lean as you want. And then you're going to reverse and go into a bulking phase. The issue here is this: if you go into a bulking or muscle building phase with fat already on you that you're not comfortable with, maybe you don't feel as great about or whatever, I think you're going to find that as you continue to put on some muscle, You also will gain some weight. You also will gain some fat, and that may not sit well with you from a mindset perspective. So I always recommend, if you still have fat to lose, start with a fat loss phase, and then you're gonna go into a muscle building phase. So with the next question, how long do I do this for? Like, how long do I stay in my cutting phase, my fat loss phase? And the great news here is you get to decide that. You get to decide how long you're gonna be there. And what I like to tell people is this: you stay in the fat loss phase however long it takes for you to be happy with where you are, with how you look, how you feel, or if you feel like, you know what, I've had enough of this. I'm done. I'm mentally done with trying to lose fat. A lot of times, that's a great indication. If you're mentally spent, it's time to go into a reverse and try something else for a while. So you get to call the shots on that. There's no right or wrong. It is all up to you. How you feel you look, then it would be time to go on to a muscle building phase. Okay, the next question I get a lot, is the scale gonna go up? Yeah, you know what? The scale is gonna go up. And you're gonna need to be okay with that. When you are ready to put those calories back in, the scale will go up. And I know for some of you, that may strike the fear of God inside of you. I know when I went through this muscle building phase that I did, that was the thing that I found the hardest part to accept. Because think of it this way, I had been trying to lose weight, lose fat almost my entire life at some point in time, throughout my whole life. And for the first time ever, I was purposefully putting calories back in to watch that scale go up. You guys, that is a real mindfuck. That's gonna mess with you a lot. You need to understand that is part of what happens. It's okay. We're gonna talk about how we can do this in a slow and controlled way so fat gain is minimal. But yes, the scale is going to go up. Now, another question is, along the same lines is, will I gain fat? Like, can I just put on muscle? I get asked this all the time. Can I put on muscle and not gain any fat? No, it doesn't work that way. I wish it did. That would be like kind of a great thing, wouldn't it? But you actually will put on some body fat. And again, when we talk about how you can control your calorie intake, the fat gain will be minimal. If you just go into an automatic feeding frenzy and just eat whatever the heck you want, you will gain a lot of fat. We'll talk about that in a minute, but yes, the scale will go up, and yes, you will gain fat, and we're gonna talk about how to keep all of that in control next. Okay, so let's talk about the bulking phase or the muscle building phase in particular. So how are we gonna do this? I find the best way to do this is to gradually add calories back in over the course of a week. So what that means is by the end of any given week, you end up in the plus column with calories from where you were before. And I would say aim for 300 to 500 calories of being in the plus column at the end of a week. And I want to stress something here. It's not by the end of a day. That would be a lot right away. By the end of a week. What you want to look for is trying to gain about a half a pound to a pound of weight a month. And that's where you have to keep monitoring how many calories you take in. It may take you a couple of weeks to get into that rhythm on how many calories you actually need. I can't say this is the magic number that will work for everybody because that doesn't exist. So again, just like fat loss, it's trial and error, right? To find your calorie deficit. It's going to be trial and error with this as well. So you're gonna add 300 to 500 calories over the course of a week. The more calories you add, the faster you'll have muscle growth, but the faster you will have fat gain as well. So if you are really kind of freaked out about that piece a little bit, you may want to take it on the slower end, but understand that you will have to keep increasing your calories every week until you actually get into a surplus. So let's talk about that. When you're in a surplus, what are you going to see on the scale? again, like fat loss, it's not, with fat loss, it's not this nice, slow, steady, consistent way down on the scale. When you're in fat loss, the scale does this, but the trend is down. When you go into a bulk or a muscle building phase, the same thing's gonna happen, only you want the trend to go up. So between months, you're going to see the scale spike. You're gonna see it dip. You're gonna see it flat. You're going to see it all kinds of different ways. And you wanna monitor all that, because by the end of a month, you wanna be up a half pound to a pound. That is nice and slow and steady muscle building progress. If you're really a little worried about the scale going up, and that's kind of part of this mindset piece for you, then take it slow and steady on the lower end of the 300 to 500. If that doesn't bother you that much, you could go on the higher end of 300 to 500. And you want to track your progress just like you would track your progress in a fat loss phase. Now, when you add these calories, here's something to think about. I would not add them in, like take 300 to 500 and divide it by 7 days. I think that amount of calories is so small to try to work with, it becomes maybe more tedious for tracking than it needs to be. What I would suggest you try, and this is what I did and it worked really well for me, is pick 3 days, maybe 4 days during the week where you increase your calories in fairly significant chunks, whether it's 100 more on those days or 150 on those days, whatever it is. On those particular days, you eat more. On the other days, you eat at your maintenance or back to your little bitty deficit, whatever it is, in that amount, so that you're in the plus column. It'll be easier to manage. You'll be able to maybe include some different foods that you hadn't been able to include because you have a bigger chunk on certain days. It's a way of calorie cycling is what it is. When you calorie cycle, you have higher days, you have lower days. That's exactly what this is. You're picking some days during the week where you want to have higher calories, so by the end of the week, you are in a plus column. Okay, so let's kind of talk about the whole mindset piece with this. And I'm talking to those of you that are really nervous about the thought of the scale going up. And I want to talk to you about my experience with this, because in all honesty, that was the thing I struggled with the most. And I struggled with it for probably the first month to month and a half of my own muscle building phase. And it played out like this. On a day that I was to add my extra calories, I would remarkably not be hungry. I would tell myself, I'm not hungry. I'm not going to eat those calories today. I did that several times. And, it wasn't that I was actually so full that I couldn't eat another 150 calories. It was, I was still scared of what that was going to do to the scale. I knew it was going to ultimately make the scale go up, and I was subconsciously just giving myself a bunch of crap on, bullshit excuses as to why I wasn't eating those calories. And I remember being on a podcast with Jordan, and we talked about that, and he called me out on it, and he was absolutely right. And it kind of hit me head on. That's exactly what I was doing. I was telling myself I wasn't hungry, and I never ate my extra calories for a while. And then I would say, well, I'm too full, and that was true maybe a little bit, but really I was just afraid of seeing the scale go up. So you have to be honest with yourself with this. If you really want to do this and do this right, you need to understand that this is what's going to happen, and it's okay, because we'll talk about what you can do when you're done with your muscle building phase, right? So being honest with yourself, having the calories that you're supposed to have is going to be imperative. And I'll give you another example of what happened to me. If you can imagine this, at some point during my muscle gain journey, and this was well into it, and I had gotten over the I don't want the scale to go up phase. So I was pretty much on a roll. I stepped on the scale one morning and I had a spike that was very significant, to the point that I had surpassed my goal weight in this one spike. And that gave me a real kick in the gut. Like I freaked out a little bit about that. And to give you an idea, I was in a muscle building phase for 6 months and I gained 6 pounds, 1 pound a month, which was my goal. So I was 6 pounds heavier, and my spike took me above that. And I was probably halfway through. So I had a good 3-pound spike, something like that. And that particular day was supposed to be a high calorie day for me. So the old me would have said, you know what? No, I'm not going to eat those calories today. I'm just going to maybe even reduce. I'm not going to eat so much today. I'm going to let my weight settle down, blah, blah, blah. I would have done all of that, right? Maybe some of you can relate to that. You have a scale spike, you want to compensate the next day. But remember, scale fluctuations are going to happen when you're in a muscle building phase, just like a fat loss phase, the exact same way, for the exact same reasons, right? So instead, I decided, you know what? Let's go for it. I'm in this to do it right. So I had my high calories. I made a shake that day. That was about a 400 calorie shake. I had my shake that day. And lo and behold, within a couple days, my weight came back down and leveled off, just like it would have if I was in a fat loss phase. So moral of the story is, you really need to be honest with yourself. This happens to all of us. It happens to me. We will make excuses to ourselves. We will try to bullshit our way around this. But if you want to do a muscle building phase, you need to be all in and do it the right way, or you will continuously spin your wheels. Okay, so what can you do after your muscle building phase? Great question. And again, the choice is yours. So here's the cool thing. When you do your muscle building phase, you could be in it for 3 months, 6 months. I recommend anywhere from 8 to 24 weeks for a true muscle building phase. No less than 8 weeks, because you're really not going to see any difference. 24 weeks is, I think, a much better indicator, but it doesn't have to be quite that long. But when you get to the end of that time period, what then? So you have a couple choices. If you feel like you want to lean out a little bit, you can go right back to the deficit that you already know how to do. That's the great news here. You can either slowly reduce your calories, or you can just go back down to where you were in one fell swoop. That's up to you. But the great news here is you already know how to do that. You already did it. You were already successful at it. So get back down into a deficit, or you could even stay where you were. That's kind of what I chose to do. I didn't go back into a cut. I just kind of went back to my maintenance and eating kind of how I normally ate. And what ended happening with me over time, out of the 6 pounds I gained, I've probably shed maybe 3 of them, maybe naturally, not purposefully, never went into a deficit, never tried, just went back into eating like I would normally eat without that extra shake that I would make, or the extra sandwich, or whatever it was. And naturally, over many, many months, things just kind of settled in, and I've kind of settled in now into my new maintenance, which is about 3 pounds higher than where I was before. I love how I look even more now than I did before this phase, and I think that's really important to note that I am truly happy with how everything turned out. But the great thing here is, you guys, you can choose how you want to do it. If you want to stay, that's cool. If you want to go to maintenance, that's cool. If you want to go down to a deficit, that's cool. So let's kind of summarize how to lose fat and build muscle at the same time. Instead of thinking the day, per day, think big chunk of time. This is how you can do it. Let's use 6 months as an example. 3 months, dedicated fat loss, be in a calorie deficit, hit the gym hard, get strong, do all that. 3 months. Then a 3-month muscle building phase. Bring your calories up per week, get some intensity to your workouts in the gym, keep pushing heavy weight, and at the end of 6 months, you will have done both. That is the optimal way to put on muscle. And then at the end of that, choice is yours. You can go back to a deficit, hang out in maintenance, keep going. Totally up to you. So I hope this helps clarify what it means to lose fat and build muscle at the same time. Little mystifying at first. I hope I have demystified this for you. If you have any questions about this, I love to talk about building muscle. Please put them down here or reach out to me via DM, because I would love to chat with you about it anytime. And thank you for being here. Click subscribe, because we will be back soon. Take care and have a great day.